Snow fell softly over the city, covering broken streets and glowing towers in a thin white layer. The future city was quiet, but not peaceful. Neon lights flickered through the fog, and distant drones hummed in the sky like restless insects. On this cold Christmas night, most people stayed hidden inside, celebrating in silence or simply trying to survive another year. The streets belonged to machines now, not memories. Ethan walked alone, his coat pulled tight against the freezing air. He was not searching for joy or celebration. He was only heading back to his small shelter after finishing a long shift repairing. Power lines. Christmas meant little to him anymore. The world had changed, and hope had become something rare. Still, as he moved through the empty alley, something caught his attention, a sound that did not belong to the city's usual noise. It was a weak cry, almost lost beneath the wind. Ethan stopped. His hand moved toward the small flashlight at his side. The alley was dark, narrow, and dangerous. Helping others was no longer a safe choice in this world. Traps were common, so were ambushes. For a moment he considered walking away. But the sound came again, softer this time, filled with fear and pain. Against his better judgment, he followed it. At the far end of the alley, beneath a broken street lamp, he saw her. A woman lay on the frozen ground, her clothes torn and dark with blood. Her breathing was shallow, uneven. Snow gathered in her hair, yet she did not move. She looked fragile, almost unreal, like someone dropped into the wrong time. Ethan knelt beside her carefully. "Hey," he said quietly, his voice rough from the cold. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open for a second. They were not normal. In the dim light, they reflected a faint silver glow. Before Ethan could question what he saw, her body trembled, and she whispered something in a language he did not recognize. Then, her eyes closed again. That was when he noticed the blood. It was glowing. Not bright, not obvious, but enough to make his heart race. Thin lines of light pulsed faintly beneath her skin, like circuits responding to an unseen signal. Ethan froze. This was not natural. This was not human. Everything he had learned in this city told him to leave immediately. But the woman shivered, and a sharp wave of guilt hit him. Christmas, he thought bitterly, of all nights. Sirens echoed in the distance, low and distant, but getting closer. Ethan made a decision he could not undo. He lifted the woman into his arms. She was lighter than she should have been, almost weightless. As he carried her away, the lights beneath her skin dimmed, as if reacting to him. He moved quickly, avoiding open streets and surveillance zones. The city's security systems never slept, especially at night. Whatever or whoever she was, someone would be looking for her. By the time he reached his shelter, his breath came in sharp bursts and his arms ached. Inside, the room was small and cold, powered by a single generator. Ethan laid her on the narrow bed and locked the door. He cleaned her wounds as best he could, though they confused him. Some cuts closed slowly on their own, reshaping skin in ways that made his hands shake. As midnight passed, the city outside grew louder. Ethan stepped back and watched her, questions burning in his mind. Who was she? Why was she alone? And why? Did saving her feel like stepping into something far bigger than his own life? Then the lights flickered. A low mechanical sound filled the air above the shelter, growing louder by the second. Ethan moved to the small window and looked up. Through the falling snow, dark shapes hovered silently in the sky. Drones advanced, military-grade, scanning the streets below with cold precision. They were searching. Ethan's heart pounded. As a red scanning light swept across the alley outside his door, he turned slowly back toward the woman on the bed. Her eyes were open now, fixed on him. Fear and regret filled her expression. In a weak but clear voice, she spoke her first words in English. "You should not have saved me." The drones moved. Closer. The drones did not make a sound as they passed overhead. yet their presence pressed down on the shelter like a heavy weight. Ethan stood still, barely breathing, while the red scanning light slid across the walls and faded away. For a few seconds nothing happened. Then the city noise returned, distant and cold, as if the machines had moved on. Ethan did not relax. He had lived long enough to know that silence was never a promise of safety. He turned toward the woman again. She was sitting up now, though moments earlier she had barely been alive. Her movements were slow but controlled, as if her body was following rules different from human pain. The faint glow beneath her skin returned, pulsing in a steady rhythm. Ethan took a step back, fear and confusion mixing in his chest. She looked at him with calm eyes, no longer panicked. There was something ancient in her expression, something that did not belong to this time or this world. She studied the room, as if she were scanning it, taking in every detail at once. When she spoke, her voice was soft but firm. "They will come back," she said. "They always do." Ethan demanded to know who she was and why drones were hunting her on Christmas night. His voice shook despite his effort to stay calm. The woman lowered her gaze, as if choosing her words carefully. She told him that names were dangerous, that identities carried signals, and that even speaking too much could draw attention. None of it made sense, yet every word felt true in a way Ethan could not explain. He asked her again what she was. The question hung between them, heavy and unavoidable. She lifted her hand and pressed it against her chest. The skin shimmered beneath her fingers, forming thin lines of light that shifted like living code. The air in the room felt warmer, charged. Ethan watched in disbelief as a small wound on her arm closed completely, leaving no scar behind. She met his eyes and said that she was not human, not fully, not anymore. The truth hit him harder than fear. This was beyond illegal tech, beyond black market experiments. The city had rumors of enhanced soldiers and failed projects, but this was different. She explained that she had been created for a future that had not yet arrived, built to survive a war humanity did not know it was already losing. Time, she said, was no longer a straight line. Ethan struggled to understand, but the city outside seemed to answer for her. A public broadcast echoed through nearby streets, repeating through loudspeakers mounted on towers. The voice was cold and official, warning citizens to report any sightings of an unidentified female subject. The message described her appearance with perfect accuracy. Ethan felt his stomach drop. She told him that the rescue had changed everything. The moment he lifted her from the snow, a chain reaction began. Systems older than the city itself had activated. Forces watching from far beyond Earth had taken notice. What was meant to be a silent extraction had turned into exposure. Ethan asked why Christmas mattered. She looked at him for a long moment before answering. She said that human rituals carried power, not in technology, but in meaning. Acts of kindness performed without reason were rare signals in the universe. That single choice had marked humanity as something unpredictable. Outside, the sky lit up briefly as something massive shifted behind the clouds. Ethan felt it more than he saw it, a deep vibration that rattled the walls. The woman stiffened, her expression tightening. She said the hunters were no longer only machines. Others were coming, drawn by the signal she could no longer suppress. Ethan realized then that his life before this moment was over. There would be no return to quiet nights and small repairs. He had stepped into a story far larger than himself. The woman stood slowly, her posture steady despite everything. She told him that he still had a choice to walk away, to hand her over and survive. Before he could answer, every screen in the shelter activated at once. A symbol unknown to any human language burned across them. Somewhere above the city, something vast and intelligent had arrived, and it was watching Earth. The symbol on the screens faded slowly, but the feeling it left behind did not disappear. The shelter felt smaller, as if the walls themselves were listening. Ethan stared at the dark screens, then back at the woman who stood calmly in the center of the room. She did not look surprised. She looked resigned. The glow beneath her skin softened, as if her body was conserving energy for something worse that was coming. Ethan asked what had just appeared on the screens, and why the air felt heavy like a storm about to break. The woman explained that the symbol was not a warning but a confirmation. It meant that Earth had been noticed, and not in a good way. She said that for a long time humanity had been ignored, seen as loud but harmless creatures trapped on a small planet. That status had ended the moment he pulled her from the snow. She told him that she was part of a mission designed far in the future, where humanity had already fallen. In that future, Earth was broken and silent, its cities nothing more than dust and memory. Survivors had learned that raw strength did not decide survival. What mattered was adaptability and emotion, the things humans had in abundance. She had been sent back not to fight, but to observe, to measure if humanity was worth saving at all. Ethan struggled with the idea that his world was already dead somewhere ahead in time. He asked her why she had been wounded, and chased if she was only an observer. Her expression darkened. She said the enemy had discovered the project early. The war was not between humans and aliens alone, but between control and chaos. Many advanced civilizations feared humanity because humans did not behave logically when it mattered most. She explained that her body was a hybrid design, part human, memory, part future technology. She could feel fear and pain, but also process outcomes faster than any machine. That balance made her dangerous. The enemy wanted her erased before she could complete her evaluation. The drones were only the first layer. Others would arrive who did not rely on machines at all. As she spoke, the ground trembled lightly again. Far above the city, something vast shifted its position. Ethan felt small but not helpless. He asked her what the mission required now. She told him that the timeline was unstable. His choice had forced a deviation. Instead of silent observation, the mission had become a test under pressure. She needed to see how humans reacted when extinction was no longer a theory, but an approaching fact. Would they turn on each other or stand together? Would they choose safety or sacrifice? She said that humanity had always surprised the universe, and this moment would decide if that surprise was worth preserving. Ethan felt anger rise in his chest. He told her it was unfair to judge an entire species based on fear and chaos. She met his anger without resistance. She said the universe was not fair and survival never waited for permission. Yet there was something else in her eyes, now something close to hope. A new broadcast interrupted them, cutting through every channel at once. This time it was not the city authority. The voice was calm, deep, and impossible to place. It spoke of Earth as a variable and of humanity as a risk. It announced that a containment phase had begun. Ethan understood enough to know that meant elimination. The woman turned to him and said that her mission could still change the outcome, but only if humans chose to act not as individuals, but as a species. She could not fight the war alone. She could only open the door. Humans would have to walk through it. Ethan looked around his small shelter at the tools, the walls, the life he once thought was enough. He understood now that Christmas night had not given him a miracle, it had given him responsibility. He told her he would help not because the future demanded it, but because someone had to choose humanity when no one else would. The glow beneath her skin brightened slightly as if responding to his words. She said the countdown had already started. Earth had less time than anyone realized, and the nightmare was no longer coming. It had already begun. Morning never truly arrived. The sky above the city remained dark and heavy, as if the sun itself was unsure whether it was worth rising anymore. Ethan stood on the roof of an abandoned building beside the woman, watching distant lights move slowly across the clouds. Those lights were not stars. They were watchers. The presence above Earth could now be felt everywhere, pressing against the minds of those who sensed it. Humanity was no longer alone, and it was no longer ignored. The woman explained that the containment phase was not an immediate attack, it was a test. The beings observing Earth wanted to see how humans behaved when they believed the end was close. Panic would confirm weakness. Unity would signal danger. Advanced civilizations feared species that bonded under pressure, because such species could not be controlled easily. Humans were unpredictable, and that made them terrifying. Across the city, emergency signals activated one after another. Power grids failed, then returned in unstable waves. Communication networks filled with confusion and fear. Some people hid. Others looted. But something unexpected also happened. Groups formed in the streets, sharing food, opening shelters, helping strangers without asking questions. Ethan watched it all through old surveillance feeds and realized that the observers were seeing it too. The woman told him that these moments mattered more than weapons. Humanity was broadcasting its nature in real time. Every choice was being recorded and measured. She explained that her presence amplified the signal, making human actions visible across dimensions. Earth was standing under a cosmic spotlight. Ethan joined a small resistance network that had formed almost instantly. They were not soldiers or heroes. They were engineers, medics, teachers, and workers. Ordinary humans who refused to wait quietly for extinction. Using old satellites and forgotten infrastructure, they began to interfere with the Watchers' scanning systems. It was not advanced technology, but clever use of what already existed. That alone caught attention. The woman observed closely as humans adapted. They repurposed civilian tools into defense systems. They used emotions as fuel, turning fear into focus, anger into resolve. She admitted that no simulation had predicted this speed of response. Humanity was not strong, but it was fast and relentless when pushed. Above the planet, a message was sent outward. It was not a declaration of war, but an update. Humanity had passed the first threshold. The observers adjusted their expectations. The test was becoming harder. Ethan felt the weight of it all, but he did not step back. When drones returned this time, they were met with resistance, not through firepower, but through coordination. Humans jammed signals, redirected paths, and protected civilians. Losses were heavy, but morale did not collapse. Each act of sacrifice sent another signal into the void. The woman began to change as well. The glow beneath her skin grew brighter, more complex. She said her systems were adapting to humanity, not the other way around. She was learning from them. The mission parameters were rewriting themselves. Instead of judging humanity, she was becoming part of it. Then the sky cracked. A massive structure descended, slowly visible to the naked eye. It was not an invasion force yet. It was a platform, a stage for the final evaluation. A voice echoed across every frequency, announcing that Earth would face a decisive test within one planetary cycle. 24 hours remained. Panic surged but did not consume everything. Humanity had been given a deadline, and instead of surrender, many prepared. Ethan stood beside the woman as alarms echoed across the city. He asked her if humanity could win. She answered honestly. She said winning did not mean survival. It meant proving that humans were too dangerous to erase and too valuable to destroy. If they succeeded, the universe would be forced to make room for them. As night fell again, the city glowed with countless small lights, fires, generators, and human presence refusing to fade. Above it all, the observers watched, recalculating their understanding of a species they had underestimated. Humanity was being tested, and it was not failing. The final countdown changed everything. The moment the 24-hour mark appeared across hacked screens and public displays, the city shifted into a new state of existence. Fear did not vanish, but it sharpened. People no longer asked if the end was coming. They asked what they could do before it arrived. Streets once silent filled with movement, not chaos but purpose. Humanity had reached the point where waiting felt worse than fighting. The sky darkened further as the massive structure above Earth began to activate. It moved slowly with intent, casting a shadow that stretched across continents. Energy waves rolled through the atmosphere, disrupting weather patterns and gravity fields. Buildings trembled, oceans responded. The planet itself seemed aware that something unnatural had claimed the space above it. Ethan moved, constantly coordinating with groups across the city. There was no central command, only shared determination. Humans adapted faster than any system predicted. When communication lines failed, runners carried messages. When power grids collapsed, manual generators took over. Every weakness became an opportunity to improvise. The observers recorded it all, adjusting threat models that had never included such behavior. The woman stayed close to Ethan, but her focus turned inward. Her systems were reaching a critical point. She revealed the truth she had delayed for too long. She was not only an observer or a signal amplifier. She was a living key. Her existence allowed access to a system older than Earth itself. A system capable of defending humanity or erasing it completely. She explained that the final test was never about invasion. It was about choice. If humanity could protect her, they would prove unity beyond self-interest. If they turned her over to save themselves, the universe would mark them as controllable. The nightmare was not destruction, it was judgment. As the hours passed, the attacks intensified. Not bombs, but precision strikes. Infrastructure collapsed in targeted patterns designed to provoke betrayal. Safe zones were offered in exchange for cooperation. False broadcasts promised survival for those who surrendered. The unknown woman. Humanity was being tempted. Ethan watched people struggle with impossible decisions. Some considered it. A few tried to betray the resistance. Yet many more stood firm. They protected strangers without knowing why. They shielded the woman even when it painted targets on their backs. Sacrifice became common, not because it was heroic, but because it felt necessary. Then everything broke. The woman was taken. A coordinated strike pierced the resistance defenses and separated her from Ethan. The moment she was captured, the sky flared with unnatural light. The structure above Earth responded instantly. Systems locked into place. The countdown accelerated. The observers had what they needed to proceed. Ethan felt something inside him snap. Fear turned into resolve, so sharp it hurt. There was no more planning, no more debate. Humanity had been pushed to the edge, and now it had to push back. Groups across the city launched reckless rescue attempts. Knowing the cost, this was no longer about survival. It was about refusing to be measured like an experiment. Inside the alien containment zone, the woman faced the truth of her own design. Her captors believed they understood her function. They believed humans would break without her guidance. They were wrong. Her connection to humanity had changed her. She began to fight the system from within, feeding it corrupted data, unpredictable responses, emotional noise. Outside, Ethan led a small group toward the heart of the structure, using nothing but stolen access codes and human instinct. They had no armor, no advanced weapons, only the certainty that surrender was not an option. The nightmare had fully begun. Earth burned not with fire, but with defiance. And somewhere within the alien system, a human choice rewriting the outcome of an entire species. The alien structure above the city pulsed with cold light, as if it were alive and aware of every human movement below. Gravity shifted in unstable waves, pulling debris into the air and slamming it back down without warning. Ethan moved through the chaos with a small group of survivors, each step guided by instinct rather than planning. They had no maps of the structure, only fragments of stolen data and the woman's last signal echoing faintly in their devices. Humanity did not attack with power, it attacked with persistence. Small teams across the planet launched distractions, drawing alien defenses away from critical zones. Old satellites were pushed beyond their limits, creating bursts of interference. Pilots flew outdated aircraft straight into zones no machine logic could predict. The observers expected fear and retreat. Instead, they faced relentless pressure from the species that refused to behave rationally. Inside the structure, the woman fought a different battle. The system holding her was vast, ancient, and logical to the point of cruelty. It demanded compliance, not resistance. She flooded it with human memories, not tactical data, but moments of love, grief, laughter, and sacrifice. The system struggled to process emotion as input. Its calculations slowed. Its certainty fractured. Ethan and his group reached an opening where the structure touched the city. The air shimmered and the ground bent upward like metal made soft. One by one, they crossed, knowing none of them were meant to survive such an environment. Human biology screamed in protest, yet they moved forward, driven by something deeper than survival. Alien constructs emerged, sleek and efficient, built to neutralize threats with minimal effort. They hesitated when faced with humans who did not retreat even when wounded. That hesitation cost them. Humans used numbers, coordination, and willingness to take losses to overwhelm systems designed for clean, predictable conflicts. Above Earth, the observers recalculated again. Humanity was exceeding expected tolerance thresholds. The test parameters shifted, but it was already too late. The data was contaminated by emotion, unpredictability, and sacrifice. The evaluation was becoming unstable. Ethan felt the structure resist them as they moved deeper, as if it recognized him. He realized then that the system had learned from him. 2. His initial act of kindness had become a variable that could not be erased. Humanity's strength was not in technology but in choice. When they reached the containment chamber, Ethan saw the woman suspended in a field of light, her body glowing brighter than ever. She looked fragile yet powerful, like a star held back by fragile walls. Alien interfaces surrounded her, adjusting and recalculating, unable to decide whether to suppress or adapt. Ethan did not hesitate. He stepped forward, ignoring the pain as the field burned against his skin. He reached for her not as a soldier, but as a human who had made a promise. The moment their hands touched, the system reacted violently. Alarms echoed through the structure as protocols failed one after another. The woman smiled for the first time. She told Ethan that humanity had already won. Not because the system was destroyed, but because it was forced to change. She activated the final sequence, not a weapon, but a message broadcast across every observing civilization. The message was simple. Humans do not surrender what they care about. The structure began to break apart, not explosively, but deliberately, as if releasing control. Alien constructs powered down, confused by contradictory commands. Gravity stabilized. The sky above Earth cleared enough for stars to become visible again. Across the planet, humans felt it. The pressure lifted. The sense of being watched faded. The observers withdrew, not defeated but shaken. Humanity had proven itself too dangerous to erase and too complex to dominate. Ethan collapsed as the structure dissolved around him. Others carried him away as the city began to breathe again. Above them, fragments of alien technology burned away harmlessly in the atmosphere. Humanity had fought back. And the universe had taken notice. Part 6. Humanity Fights Back. The alien structure above the city pulsed with a cold white glow, as if it were alive and watching every movement on Earth. The air felt heavy and unstable, and gravity shifted without warning, lifting debris into the sky before dropping it again. Ethan moved through the ruined streets with a small group of humans who had chosen action over fear. None of them were soldiers. They were engineers, workers, medics, and ordinary people who refused to wait quietly for extinction. Humanity did not fight with advanced weapons or overwhelming force. It fought with creativity and determination. Across the planet, small teams created chaos for the alien systems. Old satellites were pushed beyond safe limits to flood the sky with interference. Civilian aircraft flew impossible paths, confusing alien tracking logic. Cities that had never coordinated before now shared information through simple human networks built on trust rather than technology. Inside the alien structure, the woman was held within a field of shifting light. The system around her was ancient, logical, and merciless. It analyzed probabilities and outcomes, but it could not understand emotion. She fought not with strength, but with memory. She sent waves of human experiences into the system, moments of kindness, grief, love, sacrifice, and courage. The system slowed, struggling to process data that did not follow clean rules. Ethan and his group reached the edge of the structure, where it touched the city like a metal wound in the sky. The surface bent and reshaped itself as they approached. The environment was hostile to human bodies, yet they moved forward step by step, driven by something stronger than survival instinct. Fear existed, but it no longer controlled them. Alien constructs emerged, smooth, precise, and efficient. They were designed to neutralize threats quickly. They hesitated when humans did not retreat, even when injured. That hesitation created openings. Humans used teamwork, numbers, and willingness to protect one another, to overwhelm systems built for predictable enemies. Above Earth, the observers watched in silence. Humanity was breaking every model. Instead of collapsing under pressure, the species grew more united. Sacrifice did not weaken them. It strengthened them. The evaluation systems began to fail under conflicting data. Ethan reached the containment chamber, where the woman was suspended in light, her body glowing brighter than ever before. She looked fragile yet powerful, as if holding back something vast. The system around her reacted instantly, recognizing Ethan as a critical variable. Energy surged, trying to push him away. He did not stop. Ignoring pain, he reached out and took her hand. The moment contact was made, the system collapsed inward. Protocols failed and alarms echoed through the structure. The woman looked at Ethan with calm certainty and activated the final sequence. It was not a weapon, it was a message. The signal spread across space, reaching every observing civilization. It carried one truth that could not be ignored. Humans do not abandon those they choose to protect. The alien structure began to dismantle, itself releasing control and withdrawing its presence. Across Earth, the pressure lifted and the sky slowly cleared. The observers retreated, not defeated by force, but shaken by understanding. Humanity had fought back, and the universe would never see Earth the same way again. The sky above Earth was finally quiet, not empty, but calm, as if the universe itself had stepped back to reconsider what it had witnessed. The alien presence was gone, and the crushing pressure that had weighed on every living mind slowly faded. Cities lay damaged and scarred, yet alive with movement and sound. People stepped into the streets looking upward, not in fear, but in disbelief. Humanity had survived not because it was powerful, but because it refused to give up on itself. Ethan woke beneath an open sky surrounded by broken metal and unfamiliar stars. For a moment he thought he was dead. Then he heard voices, human voices filled with relief and exhaustion. He pushed himself up and saw people helping one another, pulling survivors from rubble, sharing water and warmth without orders or hesitation. The nightmare had passed, but its meaning was only beginning to settle in. The woman stood nearby, no longer glowing with unstable energy. Her presence felt different, calmer, more human. She explained that the observers had withdrawn not out of mercy but respect. Humanity had forced the universe to acknowledge it as something dangerous, not through violence, but through unity and sacrifice. Earth was no longer an experiment. It was a statement across the planet. Similar scenes unfolded in ruined cities and distant villages. People told the same story. The night humanity chose not to surrender. The moment when fear lost its power and choice took its place. News networks rebuilt themselves not to spread panic, but to share survival stories. Names of ordinary people became symbols of courage. Teachers, medics, workers, and strangers who stood together when the universe expected collapse. The observers carried that data with them. Every civilization watching learned the same lesson: humanity could not be controlled or predicted. It could not be reduced to numbers or outcomes. Humans were emotional, irrational, and deeply loyal once they chose to care, and that made them unstoppable in ways no machine logic could. Counter Ethan walked through the city as dawn finally broke for the first time in days. Sunlight touched the streets, revealing damage but also life. People waved at one another, strangers connected by shared survival, children laughed in the rubble. Not because everything was fixed, but because hope had returned. Christmas decorations still hung broken and half buried, now carrying new meaning. This was no longer just a holiday. It was a reminder of the night humanity proved itself. The woman prepared. To leave her mission was complete, but her connection to humanity would remain. She told Ethan that the future was no longer fixed. The timeline had fractured and possibility had returned. Humanity had earned the right to define its own fate. She thanked him not as a subject or variable, but as a friend before. She disappeared into the quiet sky. She left one final truth. Humanity would not be alone anymore. The universe would watch, but differently, some with caution, others with curiosity, and a few with fear. Earth had taken its first step onto a larger stage. Ethan stood among his people, feeling something he had not felt in years. Pride, not in victory or dominance, but in what humanity chose to be when tested. He understood now that strength was not born from technology or conquest. It was born from kindness chosen in a moment when no one was watching. Christmas would be remembered not as the night the world nearly ended, but as the night humanity began again, a species once ignored now acknowledged, a planet once small now significant. The universe had learned its lesson: never underestimate humans, because when it matters most,